Welcome back to another MCreator tutorial. So today what we're going to be looking at is Blockstates, or also known as block properties, and they can be found under the block tab under actions and data. So there is a bunch of them down below. There's this one right here, which is a Boolean, which is true or false. We also have a Enum, which is kind of like a predefined string. It's not exactly like a string variable specifically, but I'll get into that in a little bit. And then there is the integer, which we're pretty familiar with already, which is a solid number. So there are those different types of blocks. You would basically set the name of the property here and then the value on the other side of the coordinates. On the data tab, we have a few different variations that we can use. We can use the one that is basically getting the exact value, which is these three here. And if we scroll down a little bit, there is ones that can actually set a block state value while it's being used in a block state. So for example, if we wanted to replace a block or something like that with waterlogging, we could replace the block with a waterlogging set to true, or any other property for that matter. With that being said, we have the same thing as before. We have a Boolean, we have a enum, which again we'll get into in a little bit, and there is also the integer version of these blocks as well. Now by default, block states won't really be applied to the block directly unless we set them. So what we need to do is we need to go to a block that we have, go to the Blockstates page, and then we can set a existing value, which we have a whole bunch of different existing values here that we can choose from. These are the ones that are built into Minecraft itself, or we can create a custom property. We'll be creating custom properties today. So down below we have the property type, which is the type of property that we will be basically specifying that relates to the procedures blocks that we use. And we can set the property name, which is going to be the most important part to actually know about. So for example, we'll start with something like is crop. And that will allow us to use a Boolean for some reason. I don't know why we would need to specify that, but maybe you're making something that is between a crop and not a crop or something like that. You could use a Boolean property. Now these property names needs to be all lowercase. You can use underscores, but you cannot use any capital letters, but they need to also be the English characters for that as well. So we'll create that one, and we can choose a couple values here. We can choose true, which is the checkbox, or we can uncheck it for false. By default, I'm just going to leave it as false. And then let's create another one here. Custom one. We're going to set a integer for this one, and we're going to go stage, keeping to the crop theme, and we can set a accepted value for these particular variables. So for example, we have a default of 0 and 1. Maybe we want to go up to 8 stages or something like that. So we would go to 7 for that, because 0 counts as 1, and then we just basically increase +1 for our maximum, and that would be 8 stages. So let's go ahead and create that. And you can also see up here at the very top that there are property combinations. Now by default, this is used for block states. Great example is kind of like how crops work. The different stages of like wheat or whatever, those are all different kinds of combinations that can affect the block state, which will have to be eventually programmed in. I'm not sure how they're going to be implementing this in the future, but right now this, without coding it by hand, is not possible. I have a tutorial on making custom block states, so I'll link to that, and you guys can check that out if you're interested. The last one we have is enums, and this one's a little bit different. So maybe we want to set something like stage, or no, we have stage. So we would want type. Let's go ahead and just make something generic like type, and then we would click the edit button, and then in here we can specify what the strings will be. So for example, maybe we have alive, And we might want another one that maybe is dead. So like if the crop dies or something like that. So when we set these two variables, what we do is we're actually setting a predefined value that we can actually test for later on. So if we click OK right now, it's going to give us an option between one of these two. By default, it's going to be the first one that you've created. So in this case, we're just going to leave it at alive. So we're just going to go ahead and save that. And then what we can do is we can start testing for these with the procedures. So let's go ahead and start doing that. And I'm going to make sure that I copy the same names as these for the parts that are listed here. So water logging would be is crop, and we would type it the exact same way. And we can test for the block state for that particular one. I'm going to actually go ahead and just print out this first so we can see what's going on in game. I think that would be probably the easier way to do it. So we're going to print out this value here. It will say that we have a block state now. This isn't because of the block. This is because we have this block here. If we go ahead and use something like the get block position, you can see that it's going to use something a little bit different. So don't get confused that this is the block state. When we're using these blocks, it doesn't actually have a dependency specifically. It's actually the block that provided block state that's causing that for it to happen. We should be fine with just using the block state though. So let's go ahead and add another one here. We're going to use the integer this time, and we want stage. Then we're going to also print out the enum down here. So this one is type, I think. Yeah, type. So let's go in game and test these ones out right now. All right, so I have the block here, and I'm going to just click it, and then we can see what's going on here. So if we look up at the top corner here where we're getting the values, we're getting the default values for the block at the moment. At the moment, we're getting false for both server and client. That's because of the trigger that we're using. So we only really need to pay attention to one of these threads. So the first one we're just going to look at is the server side, because that's the important one. That's the one with the blue text. So we have false, 0, and all capital alive. So as you can see here, when we're printing out the value for alive, that's basically the value that we're basically setting. One of the things that you're probably going to run into, especially that I've noticed on my Discord server, is people trying to use these blocks with lowercase. So especially with enums, enums are always capitalized when you're using them like this. So it's going to be a little bit different when you're testing for exact value, as you can see in this case. So let's go ahead and actually do one more thing. I'm going to open up the game a little bit more, and we're going to look at this block in the F3 screen. We can actually see a little bit more information on the left-hand side where it says targeted block, and then we have the block registry and namespace, and then we also have the block state properties. So as you can see here, it says is crop, stage, and type, and it has our listed values. You might also notice that the type of the enum is actually lowercase here. That is just the way that it is. The stage is a solid number, and we have a true or false boolean for the is crop. So that's basically where it will be displayed under the target block when you're looking at the block specifically. It's very similar to if we look at other blocks in the game. You can see that this fence post here has different block states, like we have waterlogged, west, northeast, and south. I don't think there's any other block states that follow that, but below that we have tags for the block as well. So those are all the different types of tags that are linked to that block. So we can go ahead and change these a little bit more now. So maybe we want to set them, and we'll do that next. If we want to set the blocks, what we need to do is we actually need the same name, and then we need to set the value. So we use these ones here, and what we're going to do is we're going to copy the names, make sure the names are set up on that one, and we're going to set this one to true. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and set the enum for type. This one should be dead, I think. We'll just double check. Yep, dead. So then we also want the stage, which I'm going to just pump to number 7 for this one. When we do that, we'll print out the values that are new. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to, before that, print out the values that are old. And we're just going to create a simple divider here, just so we know which ones are which. So I'm going to just create a simple divider printing out like text between, and then that way we can know which ones we're actually getting and stuff. So let's go ahead and save that, and we'll test in-game next. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and print out the values. So we're going to place down the block here, and then we're going to right click on it, and you can see that the default values are actually printed out at the very moment that we're right clicking. So it's not going to update the ending ones until we right click on it again. So we can go ahead and see that after we've set the right clicked on it the first time, the state's also updated. Now if we go into game, we can actually see that they're updating through the proper methods. So let's go ahead and open up the F3 screen. And you can see at the side it says false and everything. If we click on it the first time, it will update the variables. It's just not printing out and updating in the console at the same time. So when we click on it again, what happens is we get the variables that we did the first time. So let's go ahead and clear the chat again, and we'll go ahead and click on it. And you can see that we have true, and then we have 7, and we also have dead. So those are the values that we ended up getting from right clicking. All right, so we have 3 last blocks that we're going to be looking at. We're going to have is the ones that can actually be set to a block state. So we can either do this directly to a block, or we can also do this to a local variable or a variable of some sort, like a global variable. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just set block state, and we're going to go this block. This is actually a thing used in Java, so we have to specify something else after it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to apply the block state that we've been using. So provide a block state, and we're going to basically go ahead and stack these inside of each other. So we have something like this, and we're going to place that onto the variable. And what we want to do is we want the same names and properties that we're using. So for example, 7 for stage, and then we want type. And then for this, what we're going to do is dead. And then for this one is crop, and then we're going to set this one to true. So all this has been basically assigned to the variable, and because we're using a right click event, what we're doing is we're applying this as the block that we're right clicking on, and we're going to go ahead and use a replace block. And we can also use a place block for this, but we want, when we're using the replace block, we want to not keep the state. And we want to, if you're using inventory or MBT, then you want to check that one still. But the one here won't work if you're trying to change the state itself. So make sure to disable that. And then we're going to use our global variable or our local variable for the value that we're going to set the state. So after we've done that, what we can do is we can go ahead and save, and then we can pop in game. If we right click on this block right now, as you can see on the left hand side, we have the variables for isCrop, false, stage, 0, and type alive. So if we click on it again, we can see isCrop, true, stage 7, and type dead. There's just one last thing that I want to quickly cover, and that is when you're testing for the Enums string. For example, we have type here. What we need to do when we're actually doing this is make sure that our value when we're comparing the string itself is going to be capitalized, because the printed out value that we got with the capitalized letters is the one that's going to be the value that we're going to be actually testing for in MCreator. So for example, this would be what we would be testing for. In short, if you need it to be lowercase, then you can use a block under the text. It's down below where it says uppercase text, and you can always just print it out like this, so alive, and that will uppercase everything in the string, and then it will be a little bit more readable, I guess, for you. If you're not worried about what it looks like in MCreator, then you can go ahead and just type alive or whatever your state value is, and then print out this value. We're going to go ahead and just return a logic variable. So we're going to print out the condition here, and it's going to return true or false, and if this condition is correct. So if it's correctly spelled the way that it is, it's going to basically return true. So let's go ahead in game and just quickly test that. All right, so let's place this block down, and then we'll right click on it. And as you can see here, it says on both server telling client that it's true. So the condition that we printed out is true. If it was lowercase, it would have printed out false. So just keep that in mind when you're working with that particular block. With Enums is specifically, they have to be capitalized. So outside of that, if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, let me know in the comments what you liked about it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching. Peace out.